This is the stealth triangle that's not supposed to exist. A black spy plane that can stalk targets in silence and twist its radar signature like a magic trick. So why do pilots, radar crews, and whole towns keep seeing the same impossible craft in the same secret test ranges year after year? This is the story of the Black Manta, the Pentagon's biggest secret weapon. Starting with the only place a story like this actually feels possible, Antelope Valley in Southern California. On a map, it's just an empty desert between Palmdale and Lancaster. In real life, it's where America hides its weirdest airplanes. In one stretch of sand, you've got Air Force Plant 42 with the 42nd Air Wing, Lockheed Skunk Works, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center all crammed in. Drive a bit north and you hit Edwards Air Force Base, the place where new aircraft either become legends or end up as wreckage. Keep going and you're near the Navy's China Lake Weapons Range. Look at the right classified maps and you're in the neighborhood of Groom Lake. Yeah, that Area 51. For decades, this desert has been the upgrade screen for American air power. The U-2, the SR-71, the F-117, the B-2, the RQ-170, Beast of Kandahar, Boeing's bird of prey, all of them flew here in total secrecy long before they ever showed up in museums. So when people talk about a black triangle called the TR-3A Black Manta, they're not just pointing at random lights in the sky. They're pointing straight at the same ecosystem that built every other that can't be real aircraft. In most versions of the story, the Black Manta is a hypersonic recon jet that showed up late in the Cold War, built by the Air Force and Northrop, the B-2 guys. But it doesn't look like a classic spy dart like the SR-71. It's described as a clean, perfect triangle. No big wings, no tall tail. Just a flat jet black wedge tuned to vanish on radar. The skin is supposed to be a special polymer that doesn't just soak up radar energy, but can also mess with how the jet appears on a screen, turning a big triangle into what looks like a little cylinder or even a tiny blip. If you're an enemy radar operator, how do you fight something that can pretend to be something else? The propulsion story is just as strange. Instead of big engines hanging out in the open, the TR-3A is said to use thrusters tucked into its corners, almost like a spaceship. That would let it slide, climb, and snap into new headings without graceful banking turns. While still cruising at insane speeds, rumors go as high as Mach 9. At that point, the main problem isn't power, it's the pilot. How long can a human body survive those kinds of forces before everything literally goes dark? Some versions take it even further. They claim the Black Manta didn't just spy. It tested long-range lasers, it jammed local weather, it acted as a flying lab for stealth tricks that later showed up on the B-2. And in the most extreme stories, parts of its tech came from somewhere off-world, supposedly reverse-engineered from crashed UFO hardware. Wild? Absolutely. But that's also what makes people lean in. Is there anything you can actually grab onto? A few things. In the early 90s, Belgium had a famous triangle wave with photos of a dark craft carrying 3 bright corner lights and one in the middle, hovering low, then gliding away. During the Gulf War, there were whispers about a mystery triangle quietly painting targets with lasers so F-117s could drop bombs with scary precision. On paper, none of this exists. There's no TR-3A line item, no patch, no unit, just stories, sightings, and a desert full of hangars that don't like cameras. And then the rumor mill adds a bigger, stranger sibling, the TR-3B. If the Black Manta is the normal black project, stealth triangle, exotic sensors, the TR-3B is the one that jumps straight into sci-fi. In that version, the aircraft doesn't rely on jet engines at all. It has a circular ring in the center filled with high-pressure mercury plasma. That plasma is supposedly cranked up to insane pressure, cooled to cryo levels, and spun at tens of thousands of RPM. The result, on paper, is a superconducting plasma ring that throws off a massive electromagnetic field. And here's the crazy part. That field is claimed to interact with the Higgs field, the thing we think gives matter its mass, and partially cancels the mass of the craft itself. In other words, what happens to an airplane if it barely weighs anything anymore? If you could actually pull this off, you wouldn't fly by shoving air over wings. You'd fly by messing with the space around you. Change your effective mass and the same push gives you insane acceleration. Bend space-time a little, and suddenly lift and drag stop calling the shots. That's the dream behind all this talk of inertial mass reduction, flux liners, and gravity control. It's why TR-3B stories are full of right-angle turns with no G-lock, hovering with no visible fans, and instant bursts of speed that make modern fighters look slow. And there's one detail that shows up again and again: the sound. Not afterburners, not jet whine, just a low electrical hum like a transformer hanging in the sky. If that's not a normal airplane, what is it? This gravity-hacking idea doesn't come from nowhere. Einstein showed that mass and energy bend space-time. The Casimir effect shows the vacuum isn't really empty. The Higgs field explains why particles have mass at all. So on paper, it's tempting to imagine using violent electromagnetic fields to poke those fundamentals. The reality check is harsh. Physicists who run the numbers point out that the fields people describe would need absurd amounts of power. Nobody has built a working anti-gravity drive in a lab, let alone bolted one into a stealth triangle. A lot of the theory wrapped around it, they'll tell you it's muddled at best and nonsense at worst. But legends don't run on proof, they run on fuel. And a big dose of that fuel didn't come from a UFO forum. It came from the U.S. Patent Office. On December 4, 2018, the Navy received U.S. Patent 10,144,532. Title: Craft using an inertial mass reduction device. Dry name: Wild Content. The design describes a craft with inner and outer cavities blasted with high-frequency electromagnetic waves to create a polarized vacuum and reduce its apparent mass. The drawings look a lot like a sharp-edged flying triangle, exactly what people claim to see cruising over the desert at night. The inventor, Dr. Salvatore Cesar Pais, only deepens the mystery. He's an aerospace engineer with time at NASA, big defense contractors, and the Navy's Strategic Systems Program, later linked to the U.S. Space Force. The Navy admits it's poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into his work since 2017. And that craft isn't his only idea. There are patents for a gravitational wave generator, plasma propulsion, even a supposed room-temperature superconductor. What really makes people stare is that these patents are public. Since 1951, the U.S. government has had the power to classify sensitive patents and bury them. Thousands vanish that way every year. They didn't. Why leave them open? Some say it's because they're harmless. Others think it's a legal flag. If anyone ever makes this real, we got here first. Analysts also see it as a quiet signal to rivals like China that the U.S. is at least thinking about exotic propulsion. On the flip side, nuclear engineers who've read the Pais filings call them buzzword soup that doesn't match real physics. And so far, there's no public sign that any of it flies. While all that played out on paper, something else was happening over the oceans. In the mid-2000s, the Pentagon funded a small office called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP. Its job was simple: collect and study reports of unidentified aerial phenomena around U.S. military operations. One of its most famous cases happened in 2004, off California, during exercises with the carrier USS Nimitz. Pilots, including Commander David Fravor, were sent to intercept a strange radar contact that seemed to drop from 80,000 feet to just above the ocean in seconds. When they arrived, they saw a white wingless object about the size of a small jet hovering over churning water. Fravor said it looked like a giant tic-tac, no wings, no rotors, no exhaust. When he tried to close in, it shot away faster than anything he'd seen in 18 years of flying. A leaked report later revealed that the cruiser, USS Princeton, had been tracking similar objects for days. The encounters were serious enough that, years later, the Navy rewrote its reporting rules so pilots could log UAPs without getting laughed out of the room. Congress got quiet briefings. Cockpit videos leaked, showing small, blurry shapes moving in ways that don't line up neatly with known aircraft. Add in other weird episodes, the rumored crash of a strange craft at Boscombe Down in the 90s, a triangular object filmed in Texas, black triangles over Pennsylvania and other states, and it's easy to see why people think there's a pattern, especially when so many of those sightings line up with places like Edwards, Plant 42, White Sands, and other Black Project hotspots. Could some of those triangles be misidentified drones, flares, or camera glitches? Definitely. Border Patrol drones and other platforms can look bizarre through night vision, but even after you strip out the obvious misreads, you're left with a core of encounters that trained crews took seriously enough to report and escalate. That's exactly where the TR-3B legend wedges itself in, between "we don't know what that was" and "we're not ready to tell you what that was." If clear, no-nonsense breakdowns like this help you, hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next deep dive.